Hello, can anybody hear me? Ta, 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 ta. Hmm.
Aha.
Hello, Ben. How are you?
Oh, Brian, you're early. What a joy.
Well, they told me 2:15 my time, so I'm 2 minutes early.
Yes, me too. I'm eager to talk to you.
I'm eager to talk to you. How are you doing?
Terrific. I love your office. Tell me about your office.
Well, it's a little bit mixed up today because I just keep stacking stuff, and I've been away, and it just keeps pouring in. Just like the cartoon where they open the door and the water pours in. Well, it's like this. The work just pours in.
Well, it's because the entire world loves you, my friend.
Uh,
You've been world famous for many decades. And I'm glad that you are alive and healthy and strong and still delivering the beauty of your message around the world.
well, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad too. The last couple of years have been challenging years for me. I've had hip replacements and I've had vertebrae replacements.
Oh,
And when what happened was, and this can happen, they're so fastidious about sanitation or about sterility, but a little bit of microbe can get in one of these surgeries, and then it can start to work its way through your system. And that's what happened to me, and damn near died. I didn't realize it until after it was all over. They told me that you were circling the drain, Mr. Tracy. We didn't think you're going to make it.
well, I'm glad you did because the world needs you.
Well, I'm glad I did too. Because
Really?
I need me. But it's nice to see you. I mentioned in my last email, I still remember how we met way back in the day.
We met, I started 36 years ago, and we met a year or two after I started. So 3.5 decades ago, we were both
Yeah,
performing in the same hotel in
yeah,
Edmonton.
yeah,
And I called you, and this is the days before 9/11 when there was no such thing as security or privacy. I
right.
said, speak to Brian Tracy. They put me right up to your room.
Ah,
We chatted, we had dinner together, and I learned a lot. You were already world famous when I was just starting, and I learned a great deal from you. And so through you, your message has gone through me and out to all of the millions of people that I touch, never mind all the hundreds of millions that you've touched of all other ways through your books and your tapes and your speeches and your
well,
video.
Raymond, I think the clout of your message has been equal to mine. I don't think there's a great big difference. You've done wonderful things with your life, and it's such a pleasure to talk to you when we get a chance.
It is. I think about you more often than we actually talk. So a lot of
Well,
airtime in my home. And indeed, there's millions of homes where you get a lot of airtime. and you're going to be on my stage and get a lot of airtime actually on stage with me. And in all the years, in all the many years you've been on stage, the many years that I've been on stage, we have never been on the same stage.
I didn't know that.
That's right.
I didn't
Never.
realize that. We've been so
Stage,
busy.
you've never been on my stage, and so I'm correcting that.
Well,
I'm correcting it in 2020.
Wow.
This is the opportunity. We've never shared the stage, although we've been nearby in adjacent rooms many times.
Yes.
And we are going to do it this time in 2020, April 4 and 5, and in Los Angeles, and May 1, 2, 3 in Toronto. The world famous Brian Tracy and I are going to be teaching our brand of wisdom. It's going to be lots and lots of fun. So tell us, Brian, what are the big messages that you're going to be conveying to my eager clients in Canada?
Are we live now?
Yes, we are live.
Okay, because sometimes there's a warm-up period and so on. Well, welcome to everybody who's here. Thank you very much for giving us your valuable time. I remember Jim Rohn at his peak of great speaking. He would open a seminar by saying, "Thank you very much for giving me the most valuable asset that you have is your time. And I promise not to make your time, I promise to make your time worthwhile. I'll make this a very valuable time." So I always thought about that, is if people give us their time, they're giving us the one irreplaceable asset that can never get back. Right. So we'll give it great value. Well, the question was, what are we going to be talking about at the Mastery of Greatness seminar? Yes. Well, something that I learned, I began studying speaking many years ago, and I came across an observation that the course of human destiny is changed more by the spoken word than by the written word or any other influence. And it is the spoken word in company with other people. As people go to a meeting, and for many years, before there was television or anything else, people would go to in-home sessions. Is the only way that people learn these things is they would get together in the home of other people, and they would invite in an authority on a particular subject, and they would talk in the living rooms and go back and forth and share ideas. And I read many of the writings of these early students, and the profound change that spending a few hours with a wise person who had devoted their life to learning these ideas makes a big difference. So when people come to this seminar, I have heard, as you have heard, that people will say, the seminar changed my life forever. I was never the same. I came reluctantly. I had a lot of things to do. I couldn't afford it. But my friend said, you really have to go. Many people have told me all over the world that a friend paid for me to come to this seminar with you. And it was the best investment I ever made in my life. So that's what you and I do, is we share things. And what happens, if you go back to the studies of the superconscious mind, is when you're in a room with other people, there's not only your mind and the mind of the person who you're talking to, but all the minds combine into an ether, and you can tap into this ether. And very often you'll be in a seminar and you'll get ideas, life-changing ideas that cause you never to be the same again. And it isn't something that somebody said. It's just something in the superconscious mind that twigs your thinking, and ever after you're different. And I know that has happened to me. That's what happened to you.
Oh, of course. Yes. Because you can watch a YouTube video.
Yes.
But then when you go to the actual live presentation with hundreds of other people in the room, it's not a YouTube video. It is so immediate and powerful and life-changing. There's lots of virtual ways to communicate, but there's nothing like being there in person.
Yes, and being there with other people who have the same mindset. So everybody who comes to our program will come there wanting to be more successful, to be more prosperous, to be happier, to be more fulfilled in the future. So they'll come and they all have that same mindset, and it sets up this energy field that everybody can tap into. It's almost like being able to speak to someone on the phone with no wires or no lines. And one person on one side of the room can have an idea, and that idea is accessible to many other people in the room. So I remember the first seminar that I went to on personal success. I went to back in 1979, and it changed my life forever. I was never the same. I heard ideas that you and I share,
Yes.
and everybody learns these ideas. And I never heard these ideas about the fact that each person has unlimited potential, and that the way you think about yourself on the inside determines what happens to you on the outside.
Yes.
And that you have the ability to learn anything. And the more you learn, the more you can learn. And everything that you do affects your self-concept and your self-esteem. And it either helps or hurts, and that everything counts. And just little things like that, you walk away with your mind spinning. And it doesn't mean that the next day your life is going to be different. It just means that something has started, a change has begun. And you start to attract people and circumstances and books and ideas into your life that change you forever.
Do you know, I'll give you an example of that. I was flat dead broke. I was 39 years old. I was 50 pounds overweight. My boss had just fired me. My wife had just divorced me. I had no money. My parents took me on vacation to Mexico, and I'm on a beach. Brian, you have to understand this. I'm on a beach. There's 1,000 people on the beach, and they're either sunbathing or reading or chatting or whatever. And this one woman stood out, not because of her beauty or anything. She was the only woman on the beach for me. I don't know why I was so attracted to her. And I had to read the book she was reading. For gosh sakes, it could have been a Harlequin romance. It could have been a cookbook. I had no idea what it was. I couldn't see the cover, but I was attracted to that book. And I was too shy to go up and talk to her. I didn't want her to think I was hitting on her. And so I walked back and forth, hoping to see the cover. And I saw the cover, and I didn't understand the word. It was Siddhartha. I said, Siddhartha, what the heck is that? And I came back to a New Age bookstore in Toronto where I live. And I went into the bookstore and I said, do you have a book called Siddhartha? They said, yeah, there's a whole pile of them over there. I went, what? And I went over there and I read this book by Hermann Hesse about a young man wanting to be evolved, wanting to understand life, wanting to realize his full potential. And I was so turned on by that book that I read every single thing that Hermann Hesse ever read. Yes. And that changed my life. And that's just a book, not even a course, not even being in a room with people. So there's a gradation, and the highest of the gradation is being in a room with a master, with other people, and the power. Like, for gosh sakes, we've all heard every single song that the Rolling Stones have ever sung, and the Rolling Stones are out there still singing today. But if there's a concert, somehow listening to them in a concert with thousands of other people is different from just playing the music. Yes. And so I am bringing you, for all of Americans, to Los Angeles, and for all Canadians to Toronto, and for people around the world, they can choose whichever is closer, Toronto or Los Angeles. And you can be in a room with me, but also with this wise master, this Jedi master who preceded me on stage and whom I learned from when I was just a little boy, a boy speaker, and he was already world famous. It's April 4 and 5 in Los Angeles, 2020.
Right.
And May 1, 2, 3 in Toronto in 2020. And there's 2 levels of tickets. Let me just explain. There's general admission, where you come and enjoy all the days and learn like crazy, network. And then there's the VIP, which I strongly recommend because they always sell out first, and we can only have a limited number of them. At VIP level, you get a special registration desk so you don't have to wait. You get a special name tag so people can see that you're special. You're first admitted to the room so you can sit where you want. There's VIP sitting right near the front, so you get the immediacy of being really close to Brian and myself and the other speakers. But on top of that, You get an individual photograph with Brian Tracy. I don't mean a group photo. I mean you and Brian Tracy, and then the next person and Brian Tracy. But you get your own picture with Brian Tracy and lunch every day. It's an amazing deal. Click on the link and you will be able to choose either Los Angeles or Toronto, and then you'll choose either VIP or general admission, whatever your pocketbook can handle, and be there and come up and hug me and just be grateful and be happy. Because as Brian says, there's no other way to learn but being in a room with a master who has proven his worth over decades, that his words work, his learning works, his teaching works, his lessons work, his books sell because they work. And I am so overjoyed that I am finally, after all these years, correcting a mistake that I brought so many other experts to my stage, and not Brian Tracy, my old buddy.
That's very flattering. That's very flattering, Raymond. Thank you. Because I think of you at the same level. I've learned so much from you over the years, going back to my first 2-day seminar with you. And I sat up in front and took notes for 2 solid days, and you talked about business success. And I had learned already that there are principles of business success that if you learn them, you can repeat them. Let me tell you a quick story. I really enjoyed it. I started studying business many, many years ago, and I read, if you see behind me, you see books. I have about 6,000 books. In my 30s, I went back to the University of Alberta and got an MBA degree. I spent 4,000 hours taking evenings and weekends and summers because I was so hungry to learn how to be a business success. Because I had read that more than 80%, and now the number is 87%, recent statistics, of people who are wealthy today started a business or went to work with a business when it was just getting started. I just saw a special on Bill Gates. Bill Gates is once again the richest man in the world because Jeff Bezos, the head of Amazon, who was number one, went through a divorce and gave his wife $36 billion. So he's $1 billion just below Bill Gates. And Bill Gates was doing done a series of talks, and he talks about the importance of learning, the importance of reading, the importance of success. And so I learned a lot from Bill Gates. And there was something I was trying to think of saying, but it came from Mark Twain. It said there are 2 times in your life, 2 most important days in your life. Number 1 is when you're born, and number 2 is when you find out why and how. And the reason I mentioned Bill Gates, I got off track, is Richard Branson. Now, Richard Branson is a very famous billionaire. He does all kinds of things. He flies hot air balloons and so on. He's worth about $8 or $9 billion. And he started off with nothing as a teenager, dyslexic, at the age of 16, printing a newsletter reviewing hit songs like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And he sold the newsletter for 10 cents a piece and so on. That was his first business. Anyway, he has 82 businesses today. And he was asked a year ago, how is it that you have 82 successful businesses and most people don't have even one? And if they have a business, it's 80% of them are struggling. Right. He said, well, I found out early that there are certain principles for success in life and in business. And once you learn them, you can then repeat them over and over and you'll get the same results. So once I had success in one business, I identified the principles that were there. You find a good product, you find a good customer market, you price it well, you position it well against your competition, you market and sell it aggressively and so on. He said, once I found out that, then I could do it over and over again. Now he has 82 businesses. One of the things that we will teach in our time together is here are the basic principles that every single successful entrepreneur uses to increase their sales and profitability. 87% of wealthy people today use the principles that we'll talk about today. The other 13% are doctors, lawyers, architects, engineers, rock singers, and so on. But all the money is made, and the billionaires as well. It's all made using these same simple principles that we'll discuss. We call them $1 million habits. Is the habits that millionaires practice. And I remember reading my first books on millionaires and finding there were certain consistent principles that they all practice, and we will teach them in our time together.
Tell me who you look up to.
Well, actually, I have been asked that question more than once, and I simply don't have an answer. There are people that I admire. The two people that I admire the most intellectually probably are Ludwig von Mises, who is a great economist and who taught about the importance of the market and how you can structure your life and your business for success. And the other was Emmett Fox, who was one of the great spiritual teachers who died in 1951. And a good friend of mine, Mark Victor Hansen, recommended Emmett Fox to me. So I read him, and I just about died and went to heaven, figuratively speaking, because he spoke so and taught so beautifully about the power of the spirit and changing your thinking and changing your life and how you can do it. And he wrote a whole series of books, which I just read over and over and over again for 3 decades. So those two. Business-wise, I've read Peter Drucker is my favorite business writer.
Right.
But there's a whole series of other great business people and business executives, business teachers who've written wonderful stuff. And as I say, we've got 6,000 books, so there's not one. There's so many. Sometimes a single book has a single idea that is life-changing.
Now, you're probably too modest to do a good job answering this question, but I'm going to ask it to you anyways. So get ready. You have to be modest, but you have to also talk about yourself. And the question is, there are some people who know the good principles that you know.
Right.
But very few of them, in fact, it's just you, have risen to the pinnacle. Why have you risen? What is it that you have that makes you so special?
Well, I was talking to somebody who was addressing that subject with me recently, very successful businessman, and he said that you have the wonderful ability to synthesize ideas. Is I can read hundreds, thousands of hours. I've calculated that I've read an average of 3 hours a day for about 50 years.
Oh.
About 150,000 hours of study.
Right.
And
Wow.
as I say, one idea added on to the ideas you already have can change your perspective in just a small way. And you're really not the same again. So what I do is I take all of these ideas and I keep assembling them, sort of like shuffling cards together. I keep synthesizing them, and then I can explain them so a person can take them and use them immediately and get results. They're not a 6 months or a year, but it could be overnight. It could be 1 week. I used to do a coaching program for entrepreneurs, and I would say that I will guarantee that you'll double your income and double your time off within 1 year. And I charge several $1,000s per student per year, and they would come and work with me for 1 full day every 3 months. And I would work with a group of people, 30 to 40 entrepreneurs, ambitious people. And they said, well, how can I be sure that I can get my money's worth and so on? I said, well, I'll unconditionally guarantee it. If you don't double your income and double your time off within 1 year, then I'll give you your money back. And I never got a request for a refund.
Wow.
And, the best compliment that I ever had was people said, I've been to coaching, business coaching for years, and I learned more from you in the first half day than I learned in several years, paying $25,000 a year for coaching, because you make it so simple and so immediately applicable. My favorite example of my coaching program is a good friend of mine who I encouraged to attend and under the conditions, guaranteed everything. And in the afternoon of day 1, I was teaching a particular principle in personal management. And at the end of the session, we broke for a break. He got up, closed his briefcase, grabbed his suitcase, and headed for the door. We had about 30 or 40 people there, and he was definitely leaving. So I followed him out into the hallway in this executive training center. And I said, where are you going? He said, I'm leaving. I'm going home. He said, I said, well, we're just getting started. It's the first day. He said, I had my money's worth. He said, from what you just taught me, I've already doubled or tripled my income. He said, I know, and I've got to get back and apply it. I said, but there's a year's worth of coaching and application. He said, I've had my money's worth. That one idea changed my life forever. And he walked out the door, and I stayed in touch with him, and he doubled, tripled, increased his income 5 times in the next 2 or 3 years. Moved to a big, beautiful house on the lake. Just changed his whole life completely with one idea. And that's what can happen. But here's the problem. You never know which idea it's going to be, Raymond. Yeah. So what you have to do is you have to keep scooping. I say like marbles on a table. You have to keep scooping ideas, because you never know what is going to be the right idea for you at the right time. There was a book. I wrote a book called The Luck Factor, by the way, and it was the publishers changed the title to Create Your Own Future. And basically, The Luck Factor says there's no such thing as luck. There's only probabilities. And if you do certain things in a certain way, you increase the probabilities that you will do the right thing at the right time. And doing my research, I came across a book called The Luck Factor, which is 50, 60 years old. And it said, it's amazing how many people's lives are changed as a result of a casual meeting with a stranger. And there was one of the chapters is that they sit next to a person on an airplane. They bump into a person socially. They call on a person in business. It's a casual meeting with a stranger that they only meet once and never meet again. But in that meeting, the stranger says something and they're never the same again. And so what I emphasize is the whole idea of probabilities. I told you I took an MBA, and in the MBA program, you have to take probability theory. And everybody I've spoken to who's taken an MBA, just tears their hair out with probability theory, because it's all based on differential calculus. And probabilities theory was developed about 300 years ago by a Swiss monk. And what he did is he developed a series of methods that you can measure the probability. All of insurance, all finance, all gambling, all everything is based on probability theory. All our numbers in our society are based on probability theory. And so what happens is if you do certain things in a certain way over and over, you dramatically increase the probability that you will be a great success. And if you don't, you dramatically diminish the probability. People say, well, he or she is just lucky because they started off and they became a millionaire. But you don't see all the hours and hours and hours and days and long nights. The average self-made millionaire in the first 10 years works an average of about 70 hours a week. And after that, they pull back to about 60 hours a week. The average self-made millionaire works 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and just works over and over again to develop new information. And as a result, they combine all of these ideas and they strike lightning and they become wealthy. And people say, well, they're just lucky. There's no such thing as luck. There's just probabilities. That's why people want to come to this program, this Mastery of Greatness program, because it dramatically increases the likelihood that you will have the right idea shared with you by the right person at the right time that can combine with your other ideas that can change your life forever.
Yes, and you don't know which moment it'll be.
Yes.
And so you need to keep surrounding yourself with powerful people. Surround yourself with me, with Brian Tracy, with some of the others that I bring, but we're focusing now on this master, Brian Tracy, and he knows about probability theory. He's studied calculus like I did. I actually graduated as a mathematician and a physicist.
Wow.
But when you learn from us, you don't have to learn calculus. We did it for you.
That's right.
Brian said he read 150,000 hours of books. That saves you 150,000 hours because he digests it. And some of the books he learned one thing, one sentence. Other books he learned nothing. Maybe many books he learned nothing. But other books he learned a huge amount. And he's taken all that wisdom and has been able to present it. And he'll be presenting it so wisely about probability, about what you can do to dramatically increase the chance that you'll be a success, that you'll meet the right people at the right time, how to behave, what to do. You know, one of my coaches said about the concept of garbage in, garbage out. Everyone's heard that, garbage in, garbage out. He said, it's not true. Garbage in, garbage stays and has children. Like when you hear bad news, when you watch silly sitcoms where people just make fun of each other, when you waste your time in bars arguing about who won a particular baseball game 50 years ago, you're just putting garbage in your head, and it stays because you start thinking about those things that you put in your head. So Brian and I and all the famous people that you and I know, we put powerful stuff in our head, powerful wisdom from books and from chance meetings with strangers and with wonderful other world famous transformational leaders that we know. And so our life just rises and rises. And what we can't stop doing is teaching you the wonderful principles that we've digested and learned and have become capable at teaching. And I just love that I do it. I love that you do it. And all of our mutual friends, all of them, Mark Victor Hansen, Robert Kiyosaki, Jack Canfield, Joe Vitale, like everyone we know brings in information and then delivers it to the audience. And for the first time in 3.5 decades, I'm bringing the world famous Brian Tracy. I have no plans to ever bring him again. This is going to be an historic meeting. Brian and I will be friends forever, but will we ever be on stage again? I don't know. 2020 is our year of collision. So we're colliding on stage in Los Angeles in April 4th and 5th, and in Toronto, May 1, 2, 3 in the year 2020. There's VIP and general admission. And my suggestion is you grab VIP if it's still available. VIP always sells out first because we have a limited number of them, because Brian has to take individual photographs with the VIPs. And so he gives us a limit of how many pictures he'll take because he wants a limit. I understand that. So as a VIP, you get lunch every day and you get individual professional photograph with Brian Tracy, and you get front row seating. You get into the room first so that you can choose where to sit, and you get a special registration desk, you get a VIP gift bag. We really overpower you with goodies so that you can really have a great experience. And not just the experience around what Brian and I will teach, the actual experience of what we teach is the secret, is the magic ingredient that you can't get from a video. You need the immediacy. So tell us more, Brian, of what they will learn. What benefit will they get?
Well, one of the things when I was broke until I was in my 30s, and then I became a studying machine, and I began to learn everything, and I wanted to be smart. So I began to study philosophy, and I read the outlines of the basic teachings of all the great philosophers going back to Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. And one of the things I learned about Aristotle, he said that all development in humankind comes in with the development of character. And character, he gives several qualities of character: integrity, courage, persistence, openness. And he said that each of these is a quality and that it is learned by practice. So success, he said, is actually a matter of habit more than anything else. It's developing the habits of successful people. So I have spent several years studying the habits of wealthy people. And I've written a book, which I'll be publishing soon, and it's called Make More Money. Just because it's perfect marketing title, Make More Money, the habits of millionaires and billionaires and how you can develop them as well. And, and these people have been studied and interviewed. One of the top philosophers interviewed 10,000 millionaires over the course of several years to find out why they feel they were successful. And for example, the simplest, 85% of them said, I didn't have a great education. I didn't have a great background. I had nothing when I started off. They said, but I was willing to work harder than anyone else. And that turned out, the more I studied it, book after book, year after year, when you pressure a successful person, they'll just say that they worked harder than anyone else for a long, long time. They didn't trust to luck. They got up early. They worked harder. They stayed later. Give you another interesting point. They just did a study on self-made billionaires, and they find that they have several habits. One is they get up by 6 a.m. or earlier each morning, and they immediately exercise to get their body and their brains moving, and they plan their day, and they immediately start work. They get up and get going 2 hours before their first appointment, their first scheduled event. And then when they work all the time they work. Fully 50% of working time today is spent wasted in idle chit-chat and chatter and checking on the email and iPhone and talking to your friends and going out for lunch and so on. But when they start work immediately. And they work all day long. They work full blast. If you call them out and say, how are you doing? Say, great, got to get back to work. They go back to work. Interesting, here's a life-changing idea. When children are young, their parents take them to school for the first time. Every parent can remember doing this. And children are nervous and they're afraid and they clutch to their parents, their mother, their father, and so on. And the teachers are waiting, and the teachers take them away and they put them into a room with other kids for their first day of school. And the kids look around, and who else is in the room? It's a bunch of other little kids. And so what do you do if you're a little kid and you're put in a room with other little kids? You play. And so they immediately start to play with their other little friends. And within 2 or 3 days of coming to school, pretty soon they think about going to school so they can play with their friends. And school, throughout their kindergarten and early grades, becomes their primary play place. I tell this little story. I said, so then they get older and they play with their friends, and they go to school events, and they have parties and after school events and weekends, and then they get older and they get sports and all kinds of activities. And I said, and then they go to university if they can, and then they can play without supervision. And then they get up and they get their first job, and they're very nervous again. They're really tense. Some people are sick to their stomach the first day of a new job, and they go to work and they're introduced around, and who are they introduced to? Other people their same age. And what do you do with other people your same age? Conditioning, habit, and so on. You play. And so most adults today, 80% or more, look upon work as a play place. So they go to work, and the first thing they do is they go and they play with their friends, just like the first day in kindergarten. And all of their working career is play, play, play. They look at the clock to see when they can play differently. They look at the clock to see when they can stop working. They look at the clock to see when they have to start. They look at the clock to see when they can go for lunch. The clock becomes their enemy. They're running against the clock all the time, because as soon as the clock reaches a certain point, they can either start playing or stop working. And that's why the great majority of people never realize their potential. So we say, if you're going to work all the time you work. When you get to work early, and then go to work and put your head down and just go full blast the whole day. If you just do that, you will double and triple your productivity, your performance, your output, and your rate of promotion. And all successful people do it. There's nothing brings you to the attention of people who can help you more than being a hard worker, being a consistent worker, getting the job done and getting it done quickly. So that's just one little thing. Another thing is wealthy people read 1 hour a day in their field. They read an average of an hour a day. Some read much more. Wealthy people watch about an hour of television each day, and very seldom do they watch more than that. Usually they record it. Now today you can get anything you want pre-recorded. But what they do is they spend time with their family. They spend time with their spouse and their kids. So they have lots of time. They work, and here's my great basic rule: work all the time you work, and then be with your family all the time. Be with your family. And I've taught this, and people have come back to me and said it changed my life forever. From that day forward, I never wasted time at work. Here's a law which I learned in studying time management. You know, I'm the best-selling author of time management books in the world in 46 languages, millions of copies everywhere. Because I studied the subject, then I started to write it down. But what I did is I wrote down syntheses. And the most important part of time management is to not procrastinate. So what I do is I teach people how to get started and complete the task and not procrastinate. And it makes people rich. Companies buy 1,000 copies of my books. Companies take the books and teach everybody how to start work and not procrastinate. And it becomes locked in. And suddenly they're paid more, they're promoted faster, they're moving up in their life, they feel good about themselves, and so on. And so there's a law that I came across, and it's called the law of the excluded alternative. The law of the excluded alternative says that doing one thing means not doing something else. Right. And Edward de Bono wrote about this, the brain expert from Britain. He said, before you do anything, you have to ask, what will I not be doing if I do this? Because if I do this, I cannot do that. And sometimes that is life-changing, career-changing, vitally important to your boss or to your company. So what you have to do is stop. Stephen Covey had this wonderful observation, which he got from someone else, who got from someone else. He said that most people go through what is called stimulus response. Is they get an idea, somebody says something to them, they see something, and they immediately respond. Talk, go for lunch, chat, waste time, watch TV, change channels, check your email, and so on. He said, however, superior people, I just gave a talk on this yesterday, as a matter of fact, the difference between average thinkers or below average and superior thinkers. Superior thinkers have a stimulus, and then here's the response, but in between there's a moment of thought. And in that moment of thought, you determine your whole life. It's something so simple, but without this moment of thought between the stimulus and the response, you have no chance at all of ever accomplishing anything worthwhile. It's when you stop and think, like your mother told you, stop and think before you act. Well, if you stop and think before you act, you will almost always act better. You'll almost always come to a better conclusion that will help you and help you again and help you again. And soon it becomes a habit. I have worked with millionaires and multimillionaires and billionaires, and I've been quite astonished. The wealthier people are, the more time they take to think before they act or commit themselves. You present them with an idea, and they say, well, let me think about that for a while. Let me just think about it over the weekend. Let me think about it. And what they found, I call it the 72-hour rule. If you have an important decision to make that involves serious consequences for your time or your money, your career, give yourself 72 hours and just let it steep like tea. Just let it steep for 72 hours, and you will make a vastly superior decision than if you just went stimulus response. So if you have the time and you can put off the time, give yourself 72 hours. That alone can make you rich. If you took 72 hours for every important decision that you make, you will make more and more, better and better decisions. And pretty soon you'll be earning more than you ever dreamed possible.
Brian, you have, and I've counted, given us 11 life-changing ideas already in this interview. Really, if someone took any one of those, they could change their life easily and completely. They'd have new friends, they'd have a new body because they would treat themselves differently. They would think differently, they would earn differently, people would respect them differently. Oh,
but these are just hors d'oeuvres. I'm just throwing these out as little like popcorn, just snacks. In our time together, I'm going to teach some really, really important principles for wealth creation. I can't talk about everything in the time that we have, but I can focus everything on creating more wealth, becoming wealthy. We have now, in the US and Canada, we have now 30 million millionaires, according to the recent statistics. we have 2,075 billionaires, and there's about another 500 worldwide. And so, but in our country, and the rest of the world, there's 20 million millionaires. But in our countries, North America, we have about 30,000 millionaires, almost all of whom started with nothing and became millionaires in the course of a single lifetime. So what we'll do is we'll talk about what it is that these people do, starting wherever you are, or if you're in business. 80% of businesses are struggling. 80% of business people worry about money all the time. And I remember years ago discussing this, and what my aim is to help people reach a point where they never worry about money again.
Wow.
Never worry about money again. You and I have been there where we worried about money and we thought about money. We didn't sleep well about money. We just totally preoccupied because of money. And just between you and I, it's a terrible way to live. It's a terrible way to live. One of your great responsibilities in life is to provide for yourself and your family so that people don't worry about money. And that's one of the things that we will do. I will give a series of ideas, tested, proven by hundreds of thousands and millions of people, and even billionaires. I have 3 clients of mine who were basically struggling, worrying about money like you cannot imagine, doing Joe jobs, who today are extremely wealthy. One of them is worth about $3.5 billion. Another's worth about $5 billion. The third is worth about $8.7 billion. They're all in the Forbes magazines and in Google and everywhere else. And these people have told me face to face in several hour conversations that basically they had nothing when they came across the ideas that you and I share with people. And then they began to practice these ideas and their lives went in a different direction.
Yes.
I've written 86 books now. 86 books.
No way.
Yeah.
86 books.
I've published 86. I published 86 books that are all over the world and in 46 languages, not all in 46 languages, but a lot of books. And so one of the books that I'm thinking of writing now, I've got about 3 book projects in my mind. I have publishers already lined up saying, if you will write a book, we'll publish it. We'll publish it worldwide. And I say, well, I'm too busy to write, please. Yeah, I just got an email today from the biggest publisher in the world, by the way, out of New York. It's a company called Penguin. I can't even believe it. My mind's just gone blank. But anyway, it's one of the biggest companies in the world. It'll come to me. And they said, please, we need this book. Please, we want your next book. I said, well, I haven't decided what it's going to be. But the reason I mention this is because I have a book idea that I could probably never write, and it's called Turning Points. Turning Points. And my thought was writing a book about turning points and what we find in life. As you go down the road of life, things happen and you turn. Your turning point when you saw the woman reading the book Siddhartha, which, by the way, Hermann Hesse was a Nobel Prize winning, one of the great writers of the 20th century. And his book Siddhartha was one of his great books. He's a German writer, incredible. I read the book and other books that he's written as well. So you read that book, but if you hadn't seen that person and seen the title and found the bookstore and so on, it was a turning point for you.
Yes.
And after that turning point, when you read Siddhartha and other things by Hermann Hesse, you're never the same again.
Right.
Look back. But that's not, when you and I met many years ago, the things I learned from you about success in business went into my evolution, and I was never the same again. So sometimes there's big turning points and sometimes there's little turning points. This conference, from everything that I've seen, and I've spoken to more than 5 million people in 84 countries. I spoke in Dagestan earlier this month. It's my first time in Dagestan. And more than 5 million people. And in every case, they say this was a turning point for them. People come up to me and say, I'll never be the same after this program. Now, I've made it kind of a little story for them. I said, imagine people say, well, I can't afford to go to this seminar or this conference. I said, well, imagine this. Imagine you could hire me with my knowledge and my experience. And you can hire me and send me out to research success for 30 or 40 years and read thousands of hours of books and take thousands of hours of courses and listen to thousands of hours of audio programs by the smartest people that ever lived, and then condense all of this and bring it all back to you. And here it is. Here's the essence of everything that I've learned in a lifetime, and I'll give it to you for the cost of coming to one seminar. Imagine that. And you say, oh, I can't afford 30 or 40 years of research and thousands of hours taught by a multi-millionaire who counsels with billionaires. I just can't afford the amount of money. What you're doing is you're hiring me and you and other people to go and spend our lives assembling this material and then giving it over and over again and smoothing it out, almost like a play off Broadway where all the bugs are worked out. And so you finally give the seminar, and this now is, for me, I've given more than 5,000 seminars. So what you're getting is the distilled essence of 5,000 seminars and 40 years of practice and 150,000 hours of research. And in the time we have together, I will give you the best that I've learned. And just today, we're just going to talk about how you can quickly reach the point where you never have to worry about money again.
Brian, that is beautiful. That's a beautiful way of saying it.
I did this once before, Raymond. I just did it once before, so.
That's wonderful. And you can get his 150,000 hours of reading and his 5,000 speeches, because you teach what you need to learn, in Los Angeles, April 4 and 5, year 2020, and in Toronto, May 1, 2, 3 in the year 2020. Come to either one and just click on the link. Just click on the link. That's all you need to do. And then you'll choose between general admission and VIP. The VIP sells out quickly. It might already be gone. So when you get there, if it says VIP sold out, you'll have to take general admission. But VIP, you get lunch every day. You get an individual photograph with the master, Brian Tracy. You get your own registration table, so there's no waiting. And you get into the room early, you get front row seating, you get lots and lots of benefits, a VIP gift bag. But Brian, I have a little surprise for you. My wife is one of your Turning Point clients. My wife had a gigantic experience with you, and she just reminded me, Karen, can you come? You don't have to be on camera. She doesn't want to be on camera, but at least hear her voice.
Yes.
Okay, so come close.
So long before I could afford a coach, I bought one of your books, and then I bought many books and then the audio tapes. And just like you said about Rolling University, I listened to them in my car all the time. And I just took one or two ideas, and those one or two ideas, like even small, medium, and large size sales, and basically staying put and working all the time you work, those things made me literally millions of dollars. And I didn't have that in my background. It wasn't going to be possible without that. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
There you are. You have educated this woman so that when she became my wife, I got a high income wife. Thank you.
You know, there's a saying from the Bible. It says, many are called, but few are chosen.
Right.
And what that means is that many people hear of these opportunities to learn and grow and become successful, but only a few take advantage of it.
Yes.
80% don't. 80% of people basically struggle for minimum wage. They're the kind of people who marched for $15 an hour to work at McDonald's. You can imagine. I was thinking about these McDonald's workers protesting, and they're demanding $15 an hour. And you look at these people, and they're intelligent. They're gone to 12 years of school in most cases. They obviously got all kinds of talents and abilities and so on. And here they've been working for 20 years, and you can see how old they are on the television. And at 20 years, they're still earning minimum wage. After 20 years of work, how could that happen? How could you go through 20 years of work and not increase your skills So if you lost your minimum wage job, the only kind of job you could do is another minimum wage job. Whereas people like you and I and the people who come to this seminar are people who are hungry for knowledge. They want to learn. They want to grow. They want their income to go up and up and up. You know, I read a discussion about business many years ago that had a great effect. It said that if you own a business, you should be planning to increase your income from your business by 25 to 50% a year. Is if you don't have that as a goal, you'll never achieve it. It's not that you're guaranteed to achieve it, but you have to have it as a goal to earn 25 to 50% more each year. Well, as an individual, Earl Nightingale once said the biggest mistake you could ever make is to ever think you work for anyone else but yourself.
Right.
Everyone is self-employed. They say if you're not happy with your income, go to the nearest mirror and negotiate with your boss. Because you determine how much you're going to earn. And that is a shock to people. When I learned that in my early 20s, I thought that you went out and you got a job and the big boss told you how much you were going to get and put you to work, and you lined up for your paycheck and looked at all the deductions. And they were enormous deductions. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was getting the gross amount that I'd been hired for. And then they took all these deductions off. And then when I learned that everyone works for themselves. If you're not happy with your income, increase the value of your contribution.
Yes.
Increase the value of your contribution. And this wonderful, wonderful line that also had an influence on me. It says, you earn not what you want, but what you deserve.
Yes.
And the word deserve comes from the Latin, and it means from de servus, servus. De servus means you earn what you earn from service to other people. So if you want to increase your income, increase the value of your service to other people. Constantly look for ways to serve your boss, to serve your company, to serve your customers more and better than anyone else. And people will always gravitate to buying and using the products and services of people who attempt to serve them more. And every company that is successful today, richest man in the world is Jeff Bezos. Do you know the value of Amazon went up 40% this year? Can you imagine that?
Wow.
40% increase in value of Apple went up 32%. In other words, I have a good friend who, so good guy, he's an executive in a nice company, and he took all his money and he put it all into Apple when they brought out the iPhone. Put it all into money and into Apple. He said he's so rich today, he never has to work again for the rest of his life. And he's just a working guy. I mean, he's a manager and good guy, and a little bit overweight. He said, but he just put it all in. He'll go like no holding poker, or just pushed it all in and became wealthy. And so Jeff Bezos, he had this basic idea: is what do people want? Is they like to read, and they want to buy books, but they don't have time to go to bookstores anymore. When I was younger, I used to be a book phobic. I went to every bookstore I could. To me, it was the high point of a weekend, or traveling, or walking to see a bookstore, and just go and just walk around the bookstore. But then you got busier and busier, and you couldn't go to the bookstore. And so he saw this: people want books, and then if you did go, they were often out of the book that you wanted. So you had to place an order, and you had to pay for it, and then you had to come back in a week to get the book, and so on. So he had this idea that you could order a book, and it would be delivered directly to your home within a week, and he'd give you a discount of 20 to 30%. And since most people didn't read the book right away, they started to order books online. And he became the richest man in the history of the world by serving people at a higher level. Today, Amazon offers 30 million products from thousands, tens of thousands of companies all over the world that are good quality, unconditionally guaranteed, low price, and delivered to your home in 1 or 2 days. Unbelievable, just serving other people.
Yes.
And every company that is successful is a company that's found a way to serve people. I say better, faster, cheaper, easier. And anybody who wants to be successful, all they have to do is look around them or look into their own life and find a way to serve people better and better than your competition, and you can earn a fortune.
But most people perceive that they are their job. They perceive that they are a dentist or a pilot or a ditch digger or an Uber driver. They are that, and they've got the blinkers on that that's all they do and can do. And so ideas can't come into their mind because they perceive that they're a butcher or a chemist, or that that's all they are. And so they actually stop ideas from coming in. And if ideas happen to come in, they throw them away because no, I'm a nurse. I just do nursing. And so I keep my eyes open. You keep your eyes open. Heck, what I'm doing today is nowhere near what I did 5 years ago, nowhere near what I did 10 years ago. I told you already, I graduated as a mathematician and physicist, and now I'm teaching spiritual principles of success. Like, hello, how did that happen?
Yes. Well, the most successful people today, Peter Drucker said this many years ago, that readers are leaders. And I've taught this to my children. My children are all readers. They read all the time because reading is what makes you a leader in financial terms. So the best professionals that I know, and I meet them every day, are constantly reading to upgrade their skills. The best medical professionals in every field are constantly taking additional courses and seminars and going to continuing education units and so on. But the great majority of people, they finish their schooling and they never learn again. They never learn again. Here's one of my favorite stories with regard to learning. Warren Buffett, who has been one of the top 3 richest men in the world for 25 years. He just bounces around in the top 3 to 5. He's been number 1, number 2, number 3. And he was asked, what is your secret to success? Well, he said there's 2. One, he reads about 5 hours a day. He studies. He studies as much as 500 pages a day. He just reads all the time. And they said, well, where do you get time to read? And his secret number 2, he says, it's simple. I just say no to everything that is not the 2 or 3 most important things I could be doing at that time. I just simply say no. I don't check my email. I don't go out and spend time with people. I don't get on the phone. I just say no to everything that's not the 2 or 3 things that are most important in my life at that moment. And so he reads all the time and won't let anything get in his way of that. Bill Gates does the same thing. He reads 2 books a week. And I was just watching this program on Bill Gates on Netflix called Inside Bill's Brain. I think it's what it is. It's a three sessions, an hour each. Everybody should watch it. And it's just asking him questions about his view of life and what he does. And one of the things is his wife. And they interview his wife. She said once or twice a year, Bill takes a reading week or 2 weeks, and he goes to a cabin on a lake, and he takes 2 briefcases full of books, and he just reads all day and all evening for the entire 7 to 14 days, and then takes notes, reads and takes notes, and then comes back and looks for ways to apply them. Now, he has been, since late 80s and early 90s, the richest man in the world most of the time. Why would this be? It's because he reads and learns and upgrades his skill all the time. When Bill started Microsoft in 1986, Steve Jobs started Apple, and they had 2 different business models. This is one of the things that I will talk about briefly, is your business model. There's 55 different business models that you could use to start and build a business, and 80%, according to Harvard, of people in business are using the wrong model.
Really?
They can't understand why they are not earning the kind of money they want, because they started off with a model that seemed like a good model, or was a copy of the current model, or it seemed to be the right thing, and they backed into the model and they never questioned it. So what I started doing about 5 years ago, and I put in now my 500 to 1,000 hours of study in business model design, and found that this is the most important part of business, is that if you have the wrong model, and there's 7 to 10 parts of a business model. If you have one of those parts, like your pricing is out based on the current market, your business will struggle, if not fail. If your product is the wrong product for the current market that you want to serve today, if your customers are not the right customers for what you sell, just little small elements in the business model, any one of those will cause your business to struggle, suffer, and eventually fail. And most people don't even know about business model design. In fact, I got an email from the president of a big publishing company today asking me if I would design a business model for a new business that they want to go into. We need the right business model for this, because I've taught them, I've trained them on business model design. So it's the same thing. Is if you're in business, are you using the right business model? And how can you tell? It's real simple. Is your sales and your profitability going up and up and up and up and up? And if they're not, you are probably using the wrong business model. So here's Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. They started off at the same time. They both were very successful. Bill Gates' business model was to open the architecture of Microsoft so anybody could design for Microsoft. Anybody could design software and market it and sell it, and Microsoft would have the core software. And then Apple's idea, Steve Jobs, who was by all admissions a difficult person, he wanted to keep it exclusive architecture so that nobody could design for Apple except Apple, so they could get all the profits that were available from using the Apple system. Now, the Apple system was faster, it was easier to use, it was more relaxed, it had more games, everything else, all good stuff. Microsoft was a business system. And so these two systems started off, and within 10 years, Microsoft had 93% of the world market for software. And Bill Gates, Apple, had 3%. And they finally reached the point, they brought, interesting story, by the way, it's off subject, but they finally brought Jobs back into Apple in 2007. 2007, 2008, the company was on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And during the previous 10, 15 years, the two founders had been invited onto university stages and television programs to sort of debate and discuss. And Steve Jobs had always denounced Microsoft as being a fuddy-duddy, boring, no excitement, no anything else. And Bill Gates was always gracious. Always gracious, and he said, yes, but our market share sort of speaks for itself. Anyway, here's Steve Jobs comes back in. He looks at the whole company. They show him everything. The company's on the verge of bankruptcy. He's got 2.5 months of cash left. And he said, we're going to need a massive cash injection or the company will die. So who does he call? He calls Bill Gates. He's been bad-mouthing Bill Gates for year after year after year. And the only person he knows personally who's got a lot of money is Bill Gates. So he calls him up and he said, Bill, and he said, hi, Steve. He said, Bill, I'm in a tough shape. I need money to stay alive. And you're the only person I know who's got the money. And I want to make a loan. And Bill Gates, it's a well-known story. Bill Gates said, Steve, he said, Apple is too important a company to go broke.
Wow.
He said, I'll help you, but I'll not lend you the money. I'll buy stock. So you don't have to pay it back to me. I'll buy stock in Apple. I'll become a partner with you. And I'll get you all the money that you need to stay alive. And that was the turning point for Apple. And after that, they brought out the iPad, the iPod,
right.
and then the iPhone, and then the iPad, and then the watch and everything else. But it saved his life. He had just that much because Bill Gates had the best business model. And now Apple changed their business model. They opened it up. Anybody can put products onto Apple. Anybody can have products in the Apple store. They changed it completely. But if you have the wrong business model, it can be 93% of the market or 3%. It can be growing and being the richest person in the world decade after decade, or it can be on the verge of bankruptcy after 25 years of work. So it's another interesting thing we'll talk about. because there is such a thing as a personal business model as well. Each person has a personal business model. The business model is the way you generate profits. So there's an equal sign between business model and profit model. And so the amount of money that you're earning is largely determined by the way you are approaching your market and applying your talents and abilities. And most people are doing it wrong. And the way you can tell is because you worry about money. You can tell if you have a good business model because you have so much money, you don't worry about money. And so that'll be one of the things that we will definitely talk about in our seminar, is how do you determine the right business model for you?
Brian, I'm in love with you all over again. I've counted 19 genius ideas that you have just opened us up to, many of which you'll be able to say on my stage. So I'm just going to finish this interview by reminding everybody that the world famous and world loved and deserved love of Brian Tracy is going to be on my stage. We're going to work together in Los Angeles on April 4th and 5th, and in Toronto on May 1, 2, and 3 in the year 2020. Please click on the link. If VIP tickets are still available, you should grab them, and you'll get a personal photograph with Brian. You will get lunch every day. You'll get your own registration table, so there's no lineups. You'll get early admission into the room. You'll get front row seating. You'll get a VIP gift bag. There's like a huge bundle of material that you'll get, a huge bundle of value that you'll get. And if it's sold out, then you'll just have to take the general admission, for which you get all the benefits of being in the room for the entire time. And when you have experienced Brian Tracy live in the classroom, it'll be your turning point. You will be changed. You will pick up a gem and it'll change your life. It's not like you'll learn one thing. No, that one thing will change you. It'll be a turning point. Like it was like for me, when I had my first wonderful dinner with Brian 3.5 decades ago and said, gee, I'm just starting. What about this? And how does this work? And he gave me such clear answers. It changed the direction of my business. It changed the direction of my wife's understanding of business before she was even in business. And he's changed the lives of hundreds of millions of people. And you're next. Click on the link. Make sure that you're there. I recommend VIP unless it's sold out. And I'll see you there. I'll see you there. And Brian, I can't wait to see you there. I love you. And every minute I get with you is a joy.
Thank you, Raymond. I look forward to it very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.